For those of you interested in grip approach and trying to figure out exactly what we're doing here, how it's different, and why you should be interested, this is a nice little overview. Grip approach is the global approach. It's an acronym that stands for Global Rehabilitation and Injury Prevention. Now, global, when we say that, we're talking about the full body perspective. We want to interpret the body as a whole, bust open the compartmentalized view of the body and its functions, and see the big picture. We also firmly believe, and we work on the fact that movement is an outward expression of the nervous system. It's more than just the arthrokinematic view of movement. When we see somebody moving and we try to interpret it, we have to ask ourselves, what is the brain doing? What's it trying to do here? We also go on the fact that there's a huge depth of synergy and interplay from the smallest cell to the largest motor unit. And when you change a small piece, you change the whole picture. Rehabilitation is simply taking somebody who's unwell or a structure that's unwell, or you can get down to a cell or a movement that's unwell and making it able again. Now, we like to go a little bit beyond that and say we're trying to regain optimal function and performance. Traditional rehabilitation is reactive. It requires identification of impairment. It also requires identification of optimal. So our challenge to all of our attendees is, can you identify impairment before your client or patient experiences it? That's a very challenging thing to do, and we're not even sure if we do it 100%, but that's our goal, and I think it's a good goal to have. Our next thing that we really base our rehabilitation on is the idea and the question, can you free the body to have a less impaired expression of the nervous system, which again is movement? Injury, essentially a suboptimal state requiring repair. This typically focuses on structural injury with well-known healing processes. We ask the question, can you favorably alter cellular repair for improved rehabilitation? We think that you can, and we show you a few areas that the research currently is showing that cellular repair, although viewed typically histologically or microscopically, can definitely be altered with things that we can do in the rehabilitation realm. We also look at the neurological influence of injury. Can you convince the nervous system that repair is complete and the injured structure can be utilized again? And in this, there's a very strong psycho-emotional influence. In injury, we also find it very important to look at the common and the known mechanisms of injury. Because movement is predictable and neurologically driven, it's a nice way at looking at injury from a preventative and even a rehabilitative sense. When you can pick out pieces of movement that look like the image of a common mechanism of injury, you have a head up on the game. Prevention. Back to our main question here. Can you identify impairment before your client or patient experiences it? Prevention, again, is classically reactive, which means that statistical analysis of former injuries is invaluable in this area. But we want to know, can prevention be proactive? Can you identify optimal without statistical data of suboptimal? To do this, to answer this question, we look to developmental kinesiology to identify optimal and suboptimal motor control. What has your nervous system prepared for? That is developmental kinesiology. That's training for adult movements. But as we look at the adult, we must also account for anatomical variances and structural changes over life. We want you to train the brain to perform optimally in suboptimal conditions. What does this mean for you as a practitioner? Well, there's four main goals as a practitioner that whenever things get dense, whenever things get complicated, we can come back to these four goals and know that with grip, this is what you're trying to do. Number one, we want you to increase your office efficiency. We want you to make the biggest improvements with the fewest moves. We're also going to help you improve the durability of success. We want you to make a change that's utilized and maintained without the need for constant intervention. And key to the whole approach, we want you to start to identify impairment globally with a full body perspective. Identify the issue that is spreading the chaos throughout the body, and also identify where success is spreading through the body. And finally, as we get more to the performance side of grip, we want to be able to identify power leaks. This is essentially areas where kinematic energy is escaping, causing injury and reducing force performance. Now, this is great for the practitioner to have these goals, but you also need to communicate this a bit with your client, especially on the training side, but it's useful for the patient as well. The goals for the patient and the client is to increase the functional range of motion, or FROM, as we discussed in our grip courses. We want you to improve movement quality, which again is a reflection of the nervous system. We want our patients and clients to increase their force performance, reducing power leaks and using that kinematic energy efficiently, effectively, and without injury. And the big one for our patients and for our clients, grip helps them to overcome the barriers to success. If we can do the first four, we often get the fifth here, prevention of future injury. But there are some specific strategies that we discuss in our courses that focus solely on injury prevention in the global perspective. So a little flow chart that'll help you process your client, process your patient, is right here. We start at the top left with identifying impairment or identifying a goal that's not achievable currently. We want to keep that in mind, and when we get down to the bottom of this flow chart, when we retest, we're again thinking about that impairment or that goal, and have the strategies that we've implemented affected that impairment or that performance goal. Step one always goes from that impairment to a global reset strategy. Now, there's several global reset strategies, but you need to think of these as neurological-based exercises or neurological-based interventions that changes the way that your nervous system expresses movement into the body. We utilize a lot of exercises from developmental kinesiology, but there's others involved in grip approach and others that you'll bring to the table as well. So identify the impairment, then utilize a global reset strategy. In the performance realm of grip, you'll then go to a global performance exercise and retest. But on the clinical side, we want to look at a targeted structural intervention. And this is where the global reset strategy found a barrier to success. And we want to go to that barrier and use the most modern and current interventions to modify that barrier. Now, often this is a fascial mobilization utilizing the research of Leeming and the Steckos and many other sources, or it may be a joint mobilization, a traction, a loading into directional preference, but we'll be very specific about that. And can you change that structural issue with a targeted structural intervention? Following that intervention, the clinical side will jump back to the global reset strategy to really ingrain that pattern. And then we progress to the global performance exercise. Some of our favorite global performance exercises are taken from Muay Thai and other martial arts, where you're using the same developmental kinesiology-based movement patterns in a very dynamic way. We're increasing speed, acceleration, force, and that kinematic energy cannot leak, cannot dissipate throughout. It has to follow all the way through to the strike, and in that strike, there is also a big neurological change. This ingrains the movement. It helps the client to own the movement and take control of the new range that they've gotten. Following that, we'll retest and identify, have we been successful, or were we looking too compartmentalized? That's how you have success with grip approach. That's the basic overview of grip approach. Flesh out all the details at a course. We've got parts 1 through 4 certification track in Chicago in 2016, and we've got another dozen part 1s spreading across the US in 2016, as well as our performance series in Hong Kong and Tokyo and Taiwan, and very soon here in the States. Join us for a course, www.gripapproach.com.